This week, Dave's after a mixed bag of fish, but he's gonna have to work for it. With fall approaching, there's a cold front moving in, and Dave has decided that these just might be the worst fishing conditions possible.
Oh, bonus fish! Bonus fish! We caught our Linder's fish!
In a land like no other, on a lake like you've never seen. Well, maybe you've seen lakes like this, but there is an angler so great, he once set the hook so hard he turned a smallmouth into a largemouth. He can unscramble an egg. He made his first cast at the age of 3 and it landed yesterday. We join him to chronicle one day on one lake. This is Facts of Fishing, the show. Here we go. Welcome to Facts of Fishing, the show. Brought to you by Bass Pro Shops. Your adventure starts here. Yamaha, Conquer Water. Phoenix Bass Boats. Experience the Phoenix difference. Live Target, lifelike lures. Action Car and Truck Accessories, the right customer experience. And Jackal, eat, sleep, Jackal. Oh, folks, I just got the official weekend weather report, and there is a major cold front moving in. Let me tell you, the freak pandas are not going to be biting today. That's the official forecast. No freak pandas.
Think about the last time you booked that vacation, that big fishing trip. You're counting down the days till it comes, and then the weather goes totally wrong. Well, that, my friends, is precisely, exactly what it's like to host a fishing show. We have got the worst weather possible. That's right. Everything that we don't want to be happening is happening for us this week. But just like your fishing trip, we got to figure out a way to catch them. Nobody ever said it was gonna be easy. You know, whenever you go to shoot a fishing show, guaranteed the conditions suck. No different than a long weekend or a weekend you got booked at a cottage or a fishing trip with your buddies. But the thing to remember when that happens to you is at least you're fishing, and that's exactly what we're doing here today. We're gonna figure out a way to make these fish bite, and a lot of times under these tough conditions, or supposed tough conditions, you know, the days are getting shorter and these fish gotta eat at some time. So we might need a little sun on this water, but sooner or later, we're gonna figure out a way to catch these fish. Because I really just don't have a choice. I mean, crew's here. Show is going to really suck if I don't catch anything. But it wouldn't be the first time. Fish. I hate the spinner baits. Oh, a good one too. Oh, man. Oh, wow. Plowed that spinner bait. Man, it just feels like a spinnerbait kind of day. I mean, you got clear bluebird skies, a lot of sun and wind, and it screams spinnerbait. Oh, it's a pretty big one to be pumping like that. Look at that dude right there. Man, that is a chunk. Hammered that spinnerbait. Look at that dude right there. Gotta have a stinger. You know, some guys don't throw a stinger hook on a spinnerbait, and that's cool. I am just not one of those guys. Way too many fish swat at that bait not to have a stinger on it. A lot of times these cool nights, you know, they'll push those fish off And as the day goes on, you know, people will say the water gets warmer. It doesn't really warm up that much. I mean, a little bit, but more or less, it's got more to do with the fact that, you know, that sun just, you know, they heat up the rocks, and those fish know it's munch time. Now, as that sun starts to get higher in the sky, you know, those shallows, they just start to become more appealing to those fish that have pushed off in those cold evenings. Sometimes it's an afternoon deal this time of year, you know, as those nights get colder. Just staying out a little longer in the day, or starting your day a little later, really pays off. That's what I'm thinking right now anyways, but the fish gotta make me sound like I know what I'm talking about.
This segment is brought to you by ARE Truck Caps. ARE, outfit for life.
Sometimes even when fish are inactive, you know, you always are thinking slow, but it just goes to show you, you know, sometimes even inactive fish like these fish here today, I mean, speed can sometimes be your friend, and it's just simply, you know, law of averages. You're putting your bait in front of a lot of fish that are not whacking at it, but sooner or later, one of them makes a instinctual decision. You know, it just snaps at that bait as opposed to, you know, thinking about it. It just simply reacts. So a spinnerbait's just gonna allow you to cover a lot more water. And I'm not saying every single fish is gonna eat it, but you're gonna get your percentage of fish that whack at it. Tanked it in the very same spot, in the exact same spot. Just goes to show you, always spin back around. You know, you catch a fish from one spot, and generally that's not a mistake. I mean, there's a reason that one fish was there, and there's probably a few more in the area. Let me get this dude in the boat. See how that fish is hooked right there? Just shows you how these fish are not really smacking that bait. I mean, they're just swatting it with their tail right there. They're not really actively feeding, but a spinnerbait on a sunny day like today, I mean, they have no choice but to eat it. I mean, you put it in front of enough of them, and sooner or later, they're gonna smack it. Wow, smoked it right there. One smoked it, and there comes another right beside the boat. That other one just followed it up just a second ago. So what we're learning here today is even under these tough conditions, you know, you get one, and you better stick around because you'll probably get another. Pretty decent little chunk. Remember what I said earlier about a stinger hook? Case in point right there. Always run a stinger hook on your spinnerbait because they will just swat at that bait, especially in these adverse conditions like this. But if you got that little stinger hook or trailer hook, whatever you want to call it, you won't miss out on them. If you find one, a lot of times there will be more than one. Gone. That little trailer hook paid off. I mean, that first fish came up right beside the boat, whack! And on my very next cast, I cast in. You know, it's just way too simple to have a fish follow up beside the boat and say, oh, he missed it. Always, always cast back to those fish. I mean, you get in an area where there's a fish, you see a fish blow up, you see a fish on your graph. I mean, people will say, should I cast to it? Yes, every single time. If you know a fish in the area, make sure you cast right back to it. Fish right off the point. I mean, exactly where you would expect them to be. Little largemouth chunk. That dude right there, right off the point. Like I said, that's exactly where you would expect that fish to be. You know, a lot of times when the wind starts to blow like this, a lot of guys will vamoose, get out of that area. That can be a mistake. You want to stay where those fish are, and a lot of times they're in the wind. Even fish that are inactive, kind of like the fish we're dealing with today, I mean, the temperature has been all over the board, and these fish are just truly jacked up. There's a fish, smoked it. Wow. Oh, how's that for timing? Oh, what do we got here? Oh, bonus fish. Bonus fish. We caught Al Linder's fish. Walleye. Check that out. Check that out right there. Walleye smashed that spinnerbait right there. And that's one of the cool things about fishing later in the year. I mean, you get a lot of different fish that seem to, hey, easy, easy, easy. Ha! Sunshine. We're gonna hit the rocks. Walleye's trying to bounce out of my hand, but we're catching a few. All sorts of different species are piled up on that wind-blowing point, and like I said, you know, a famous angler, one Kevin Van Dam, always says the wind is your friend, and that's exactly what we're learning here today. I mean, even when they're totally inactive like they are today, they gotta be a few fish on a wind-blown point like this. There's just too much going on. I mean, even if 98% of the fish in the lake are totally shut down, the 2% that are actually munching have got to be somewhere like this. You got to get fish wind-blown point like this. I mean, it's just too stereotypical. And the nice thing about an area like this is if there is fish on it, generally they're very active. You know, they're up there for one reason. You got all those waves crashing around in there. That's knocking stuff off the rocks. Bait fish are eating. And so are the predator fish. These fish are off. It's crazy. It's like you basically got to hit them in the head. That's what I think's happened. Like, that's why, you know, several of the fish, bonk, all of a sudden, as soon as the bait hits the water. I literally think you hit them in the head and they just respond. Our fish, right on the point. I mean, they're so predictable. You knew there was gonna be one. Another walleye. We got dinner. Another walleye. Hey, who says walleye don't eat spinnerbaits? Look at that. 2 in a row and hailed that little spinnerbait. This time of year, they eat everything. Even on days when they're totally inactive like this. I mean, you can get them to react. And it's kind of just like, you know, when you feel a fly in your arm. You don't stop to look and wonder what kind of fly that is. You just react. You just swat at it. And that's what's happening with these fish as I run my boat up on the rocks. Just feel a line from the Great L Linder. They're sticked. They're sticked down there like cordwood. Shout out to Albert Linder. See ya. Little one. Small fry. You are much too small to duel with our show. Maybe you should try another.
This segment is brought to you by Hook Performance Fishing.
You know, I'll talk about paralleling the shoreline a lot, but it's even more important when you're fishing a drop-off like this. If you look at it, I mean, for some strange reason, a lot of times anglers, you know, they forget that exactly what you see on shore is what's happening under the water. So you know an area like this is gonna have a sudden drop. And if you're gonna stand out there and cast in, your bait's hardly gonna be in the strike zone. Parallel those shorelines on every single shoreline, and it becomes even more important on a sudden drop off like this. Hug that shoreline, just get right tight against it and cruise along. Your bait will be in the area of the fish a lot longer and a lot more often.
Temperatures start to cool, there is really only one thing you can count on, and that is that these fish, they want to group up, and they want to group up in a hurry. So it just makes mathematical sense. With that being in mind, hit as many points as you can. Those first 3 or 4 casts are key. You've got to get that bait in front of them in a hurry. The more points you hit, the more chances you're going to run into the mother lode. There's a fish. Another one. Another little dude. But you see, you know, you can get up on a point like this, and these definitely aren't the size of fish that I was hoping this point would have, but you get on a point and you can get a little wolf pack of them. You know, these fish, they want to group up this time of year, and they're just not quite there yet. But running and gunning points, you know, you will come across a pack of them, and they're not always going to be those little small ones. When I say those first 3 or 4 casts are key, what I mean is think about it. Think about all the spots you fish throughout the year. I don't care what you're fishing for. When do you catch that fish? Generally, it's not after you've been fishing the spot for 20 or 30 minutes. Generally, there's a few hot fish there. So always you want to make those first 3 or 4, 5, 6, 10 casts. You want to make those to the key pinpoint areas. As you approach a point, think of where that fish would be sitting and eliminate those spots one by one and make sure those first few casts count. the easiest time to catch a fish. I mean, you roll up on a spot, it has no idea you're here. You know, your waves from your boat haven't hit the shoreline. They're unaware. And usually they're pretty susceptible to a bait. Oh, right inside the boat. Wow. Wow. Oh, that dude right there. I mean, wow, that thing ate it literally right at the side of the boat. Oh, gotcha. Man. Oh, look at that dude right there. Look at that dude smoke that little swim jig with a chunk craw on it. And the coolest thing about it was just basically, I mean, it happened right beside the boat. I was just pulling my bait out of that weed clump and he smoked it right there. Whew. Made that little chunk a lot more exciting. Gone.
Dave fished for 8.5 hours, made 402 casts, and caught 12 fish. That's the score. Now time for the facts. Dave caught his fish on either a Jackal Super Eruption spinnerbait on a 7-foot 2-inch medium heavy casting rod with 15-pound fluorocarbon, or a half-ounce swimming jig with a Jackal chunk craw on a 6-foot 8-inch medium heavy casting rod with 30-pound braided line. And that's the facts.